Hey Sean, can you tell us what makes a website rank well?
I know because years in the past, I used to have some popular websites that got a lot of traffic. And back then, the internet was literally a lot smaller place, so really there was a lot less competition. Now there's a feeding frenzy of stuff. Now Facebook gathers so much attention that when people get into that walled garden, they don't get out. But still, the place where you make your stripes is on the open web. Two of the phrases that make sense that rank well for me are WordPress development and website design. And both of those are such broad niches that I'll never rank well for those just because of how much horsepower you have to bring to rank well on those. So the next thing you have to do then is niche down and figure a way to get into a niche that is narrow enough that you could do well. In other words, if the pond is too big, look for a smaller pond. So a niche down would be, instead of WordPress development, it would be more a geolocation, because by and large, I do a lot of work with mom and pops or local in the Victoria area. And so I'm doing WordPress work, then I'm trying to niche down into the question and the topic of WordPress Victoria. And as I said in another video, I am on page 14 for results. Changes week by week, but I'm never better than page 10. So there are lots of ways that other people are ranking well for that I've discovered, and they've emerged as patterns. And there are ways that I could change my game to make my site work well, and I'm working on that. So the way they rank well, and in my head I've got a list of places, and I'm going to, as we go, show off some screenshots of what's what. Uh, One of the big ones is longevity. Longevity of, if you've been in the game long, you rank well just because people have just inadvertently given you credence because of the age of your site. One site that's ranking usually on the first half of the first page, maybe always first, is 18 years old. And because it's 18 years old, anyone who's less than 18 years old has to work uphill. And I watch as a site that's really prominent, has had a lot of international exposure and done a lot of design, and they're 16 years old. And they're ranked, like, they're around page 3 to 5. The next thing to do after longevity and just being there for a long time is really good content. And I know everyone says content is king, and there was a thread I was on with some really good people at SEO 101 who were like railing back against the concept of, is content king, and Bill Gates' statement. And honestly, content is important, but it seems like it's not the most important thing. So with that, you have to look at, say, well, content is important. And in one of the best ranking things I have, it's a CSS converter that converts pixels to a variable width thing that you put in your style sheet, comes out with a full result, and people just plug in their style sheet and come out with a nice result. That's providing some utility. So similar to how content is strong, utility is even stronger. Places like CSS Tricks, CodePen, Stack Overflow, all those sites perform really, really well because they provide a lot of utility and a lot of content. So after longevity and content, good site organization. If the architecture and the information architecture is strong, that's huge. Poorly navigated, poorly organized sites, stuff that's hard to, it's hard to find something, those are killers. And you have to make sure everything's good. You have to have a top bar that gives you what you need to see. It has to have a nice place at the footer. I always put at the footer your last chance stuff, where if you didn't get the information from the top of the page down to the bottom, your last chance to get that useful information is right at that footer. And that's sometimes all dump links that seem like non sequiturs, but I know that if you've come to the site and you tried to get to it and you didn't get to it, you're at the footer because you're a little bit desperate, or you're just somebody who reads top to bottom, and you're not somebody who reads top to bottom. So information architecture is really important. The one thing I have been pushing, because I know it's a strong, strong ranking factor in mobile sites, and mobile is taking over. Google is considering mobile first when it renders its websites to see what's the most important factor in a website, and that is site performance. Is your site, does your site load fast? Does it render well? Does it look attractive? Because Google's good for being able to infer the visual look of a website and then see what makes it rank well. And Google will then render your site and see if it ranks well. Does it show off important stuff? Does it bleed over the sides? Does it do weird mobile things? And if it performs poorly on a visual level, then it will lose points. If it performs poorly on a speed loading, it will get buried. And that's why we have the performance boost piece, because we've seen a lot of sites that are hobbled solely because of their speed and ranking. So those are the easy ones you can control inside of your site, your content, your longevity, your content, your performance. But the other things that come outside are just classic advertising and marketing. If you have a lot of backlinks from relevant sources, like if you got a link on Elegant Themes or on Stack Overflow or Wikipedia, those are all gems of places where the traffic leads back to you. Another place, if you're like in my boat where it's a WordPress design site and I'm trying to rank well for WordPress and WordPress in Victoria, I'm going out there and I'm making the rounds of all the directories and all the places where you can have a listing for what we do, and then go there and talk about what we do in a way that, so you're saying in a design space, you're saying, well, this is how we do design. Or in a PHP space, this is how we're PHP coders. Or in a WordPress space, this is how we're WordPress people. And going to these sites that are ranking well for these pieces of information and these specialty niches, and saying we're part of that niche in a way that they lend credence to what we're doing. And the last one, which a lot of people go to fairly quickly, is advertising. And there are two sorts of advertising. There's three sorts. Back up. Three sorts of advertising I see that are present. One of them is the simple Google AdWords. You just pay for AdWords. You put in remarketing pixels, so you almost digitally stalk people as they go page by page. So you keep showing them ads and just kind of wear them down. That works, I think, because obviously high-ranking people do that. They do that, and you'll see their ads 60 times in a day because they got you dialed in. Next to that is sponsored posts, and there's local newspapers that will run sponsored, let you run an article where you say what you want to say, but gain the authority of being in a news website, locals, that gives you that sort of special, sort of local and specialty knowledge. And the cost there isn't that bad. I think it's $425, which is like not bad. The other place is directory listings. Yelp, for example, it's a kind of rarefied space that people are going to Yelp to search for local services, and some fields, some niches don't have anyone represented as a paid partner. So while if you're competing against 5 other paid partners for that front spot, it kind of is dubious as to whether or not you should try there. But if you're competing against no one, that money is well spent, because there's going to be you and the also rans. So in a place like Yelp, it's really valid. The other places you can go for classic directory listings where it's free. As I said earlier, directory listings are good, but what you also need to do is look for the ones where you pay to play, where there's a premium fee, and if you pay it, you get into a premier spot, and that puts you head and shoulders above other people. And I mean, it's nothing different than how Google is doing its thing. Google with their ads, if you see the spot 0, it's arguable whether spot 0 is the ad spot now or that pre-done answer, tomato. That first spot on the page goes to the paid ads, and that's what Google does. And that premier listing, that pay to play, is happening. And in how to rank well, sometimes it's effort, but sometimes you have to pay your way, and you have to go out there and you market like the other people. The one thing I found in getting this information and figuring out the factors of longevity and content and performance and all of that has been to go through and use analytics tools. And there's SEO Moz, there's Ahrefs, there's FCM Rush, there's Screaming Frog. There are a lot of tools out there that people can use to kind of get a better sense of what their site is and how it ranks elsewhere. And what you can do with those is you can go out there and see how you're ranking. And I found some disturbingly sad results about where I'm ranking well and who my peers are, because they are really obscure sites I've never heard of. So I'm right in the middle of obscurity. But I looked at the really popular people and saw where they're linking. And one thing about building up your credence and building up your popularity online is you don't have to go to one competitor and say what's working for them and copy them. You can go to your 10 competitors and say what's working for all 10 of them and copy all 10 of them. It's akin to the idea of the skyscrapering, where a skyscraper is 40 stories tall, but the really tall skyscraper is the 41-story one. So you don't have to compete like your top competitor. You just have to compete a little bit better than your top competitor. And one way to do that is to compete as well as the aggregate of your 10 top competitors. Because unless you're just, the only person selling something, you've got a lot of competitors to draw from, a lot of people in the field who are doing better than you. And until you try to get up to that prominent spot, you can go there and you can use these analytics tools to assess what your competitors are doing, and then just do the same. Look in the same fishing holes. Look for where they're listing well, and you go to the same places and you list there too. You're copying them, and you're not showing originality, but you're not really going to get a strong reward for originality. You're going to get a strong reward for asymmetrical thinking. You're going to get a strong reward for being everywhere popular and ranking. That's part of the backlink strategy. It helps to build you up. And I mean, for us, we've got one ranking thing where my site's just pathetic. It's 6 million spots. It's 599,999 websites are doing better than us. But in the last 3 months of putting some attention to this, I have gone up 620,000 spots, which, to still end up at 5 million after that amount of time is sad, but I'll take a 620,000 position win because it's still a win. And it's a lot of conscious pushing on it. And I think that conscious pushing for me isn't going to be like a 3-month exercise and I'm victorious. It's going to be a 1-year exercise. And behind the battle of trying to gain and manufacture this popularity, I got to do the really basic thing of turn out really good work. And if my good work is good, people will speak well of me. And if people speak well of me, my prominence will climb. So, that's the other missing piece. Just do really good work. And that's how you end up ranking well.
Awesome. That was a very fulsome answer. Thanks, Sean.